Ndi Madikwana, President Ramaphosa. Good to be with you all again this evening. The Bible says that the wisdom of this world is foolishness with God. And I think that sort of means something like this, that the more we know, the more we should get to know how little we know. And I want to give you an illustration of this. In the British Daily Mail today was this headline: cloth masks are ineffective against COVID-19, says ex-Biden advisor and top epidemiologist, who is urging Americans to wear N95 masks instead if they have to. Ineffective against COVID-19. Now that's remarkable, because the whole world, especially the free world, have been forced into hiding our faces for the last 17 months, mainly behind cloth masks, under the banner of science. That science says that this is the way to go, what we should be doing. Now, I want to say that I am not anti-science. I thank God for the wonderful blessing of real, true science. The fact that I'm able to speak to you here this evening, anybody in the world could join us. We've got about 10 with us tonight, and some of them are family. Is that viral? No? There's some others are watching it on YouTube. But you know, we have this kind of technology, wonderful technology, and we have scientists to thank for that. Scientists like James Clerk Maxwell and Michael Faraday, who were forerunners in electromagnetism. And so I'm not anti-science at all. But what I want to say is that the science should never be settled. And we've seen that in that quote this evening, this epidemiologist saying that that cloth masks are ineffective. And you know, that has been the history of science. Scientists that once believed in the cosmology of Aristotle, that the Earth was at the center of our solar system, that was settled science in its day, until scientists like Galileo and Johannes Kepler came along and corrected it. Spontaneous generation, the idea that life just arises from non-life, from chemical processes, was believed. That was settled science until scientists like Louis Pasteur came and showed that life only comes from life. 120 years ago, extremely influential scientists believed that Black people were subhuman. Some even spoke of them as being another species. When I was in high school in the 1970s, we were taught about these dozens of so-called vestigial organs, all these body parts that were leftovers from our so-called evolutionary history, dozens of them. Today we're down to about a handful. Because you see, we just didn't know what they did back then, and we're getting to know. 15 years ago, the settled science was so-called junk DNA. That about 98% of our DNA, the information in our DNA, was leftover vestigial junk from, again, our so-called evolutionary history. There are some scientists saying today that that may well go down as one of the biggest mistakes in biological science. And you know, some of those people that believed in junk DNA 15 years ago, and I'll mention one name, Francis Collins, the head of the NIH in America, was one of the forerunners of that idea of junk DNA. He's been in charge of much of this vaccine rollout. He also may have been partly responsible for the creation of the COVID virus as well. And those same scientists that a few years ago were saying just about all junk, they were wrong in our DNA, now believe that they know so much about the the information molecules of life, that they can create their own information, like has gone into these messenger RNA vaccines that are being rolled out. You would think there would be some humility, but it's hard to detect. All we hear is vaccinate, 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 and I am not anti-vaccination. But we were being told at the end of last year that vaccination would put an end to all of this. We could return back to normal. And we certainly already know that that is not true. The most vaccinated countries in the world, some of them going back into lockdown, already are beginning to give booster shots as they realize that it's not shutting the COVID pandemic down. I want to say again, I'm not anti-vaccine. I heard the other day that my older brother, when he was a baby, he was infected by polio. I had an older friend when I was a kid who was disabled from polio. So what an incredible blessing vaccines have been to this world and have saved us from untold misery and suffering. But I also know that this mass rollout is unprecedented, of even vaccinating people that are at extremely, extremely low risk of symptomatic infection. I'm going to talk tomorrow night, my last talk, on my approach as a Christian to vaccination. But I just want to put it there that I'm not anti-vaccine or anti-vaccination by any means. But, you know, we don't get to hear of the dissent that is out there as well among highly qualified scientists. Just one example here, a Dr. Geert van den Bosche. He is a Belgian scientist, and he's been writing these letters to the World Health Organization, titles like Open Letter to All Authorities, Scientists and Experts Around the World. Another presentation he gave, why should current COVID-19 vaccines not be used for mass vaccination during a pandemic? And the third one that you've got on the screen, he calls for the immediate cancellation of all ongoing COVID-19 mass vaccination campaigns. Now, he's not anti-vaccine either. He's heavily involved in research in vaccination. Let me give a bit of his background. He has a little bit of his CV here. Trained as a veterinary in veterinary medicine, but then his PhD in virology. Just a little bit of his CV, he worked for the German Center for Infection Research at the University of Cologne. He was the head of their vaccine development office, managing director of another vaccine research and collaborations organization. He worked for Gavi on the Ebola vaccine, program manager for the Ebola vaccine that struck with devastating consequences parts of our continent a few years ago. He worked for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, senior program officer, global health and vaccine discovery. In other words, this man is no lightweight when it comes to vaccination science and virology. And he is warning that this mass vaccination is going to have devastating consequences, actually accelerating the development of genetic mutations which are able to get around these viruses and around our immune systems. You see, I don't know if he is correct or not. I don't know. The scientists that are advising you, President Ramaphosa, don't know whether they are correct or not either. Many of them, as we've already said, have massive conflicts of interest in their various fields, and they work for the government, and the government is driven by ideological agendas and political agendas. It's not just about our health. Some of your ministers in the very early days of COVID were talking about the great reset, the great economic reset. And so immediately, you know, this isn't just about our health, is it? And this is happening throughout the world. But the point is, we don't know. And we are embarking on a program that is unprecedented in the history of medicine, not knowing what the consequences will be with a very, very new vaccine technology, messenger RNA. President Ramaphosa, get alternative advice. Weigh the different counsel up that you are getting from different sides. Try and get some input from people that aren't beholden in some way or another to the pharmaceutical industry. Our lives, the health of our country, our economy, millions of jobs are dependent on you playing a leadership role and charting a course that you believe best for our country. Again, I pray that this might reach you, and this video, again, I'll upload it to YouTube and it'll be available on my YouTube channel. God bless you. Nkosi Sikelele, i-Africa.